Cincinnati Kid. Hubbard's got a convoy. Chased by Andrews. At the 30, the 20. He will score.
To the end zone, down the field, and it is deflected and gone. Touchdown, A.J. Green.
Over goes back to throw. Men are coming late. Looks right down the middle. There's Eddie Brown. He has it at the 35 to the 30. He may go 10-5. Touchdown.
Now the Bengals Super Bowl chances rest on his right foot. The kick is up.
Yeah.
It is good.
Corey Dillon, he's gone. The knockout punch, you're looking at it. 65 yards.
And they're back to throw as the blitz is on. Goes long, intended for Collinsworth. He has it down to the 20. Touchdown. And Chris Collinsworth.
Throwing the long ball. Deep down the field. Chad Johnson's coming. Touchdown. Cincinnati.
Look at Chase go. Oh my goodness, what a gear he just found. Chase for the touchdown. Wow, Chase is on the case.
It is no fluke. It is a fact. The Cincinnati Bengals are headed to Super Bowl 56. The play clock at 3. Shotgun snap. Carr throws into traffic. Intercepted. Jermaine Pratt has the football.
Yeah.
Coffin nails.
Bam, bam, bam. How about that?
Week 8 preview. Welcome in, everyone. Chatterbox Bengals. Jacob Tissett, joined by Craig Sandlin, as always. Craig, I'm feeling good. Big test coming up this weekend against the Eagles. We're going to find out what these teams made of. Hopefully get our first win in Paycor Stadium this season. But as we know, this team loves a whiteout, so hopefully able to get back on track at the home playing field. So how are you feeling about it? Had a couple days since Tuesday to digest. I love going to Champions Grill, our friends over at Champions Grill, but I love every other Thursday when I get to spend it here with Craig Sandlin.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know if I'm quite as funny as the zebra, but I appreciate you hanging out with me nonetheless.
We won't have nearly as many first touchdown bets.
No, we won't. No, it's a big matchup for the Bengals this weekend. Look, you've got a Philadelphia team coming in, winners of 3 of their last 4, 2 straight after their bye week. I mean, it's a tough test, and they do some things really well that the Bengals are going to, have a big challenge against. So I'm excited for this one. I know. I told you before, I'm not all the way back yet. Like, right. I know you are all the way back. So, this will go a long way to telling me whether or not I can be a little bit more confident in this Bengals team moving forward. So, nonetheless, I'm excited to see how the Bengals come out and fare in this one, and excited to break down some of the important matchups as we get into the show a little bit.
And that's exactly where we go first. This is a big-time game because there's big-time players on both sides of the ball for both teams. I mean, obviously, you have the big three in Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. But they have a big three of their own in Philadelphia, Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, and A.J. Brown. And all 6 of those guys are expecting to have big days this weekend. We've seen big numbers from all 4 wide receivers. Both quarterbacks have put up big-time games at different points this season. I expect this game to certainly be a shootout and an exhibition of 2 elite offenses. I'm going to start with the 2 Philadelphia wide receivers, and we know what A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith can do ever since Philadelphia's made that move for A.J. Brown, obviously extending him, making him one of those $30 million wide receivers, a big-time group, an illustrious tag to have placed on you as a wide receiver in the game today, and he got it, and he's living up to the potential, and they extended Devontae Smith as well, and this offense hasn't really missed a beat this year. They've had a lot of criticism. Nick Sirianni's been hated on a lot. Seat's been called hot, but at the end of the day, they're sitting here with a pretty good record a few weeks into the season. Just, headed to Cincinnati against the Bengals. Both fan bases think it's a prove-it game. 4-2 for Philadelphia, 3-4 for Cincinnati, and it's going to come down to the back end. And Bengals have had some big-time injuries to the back end so far this year. Dax Hill tearing his ACL, out for the season. Cam Taylor-Britt not injured, but certainly lacking what we expected from him when it comes to production. And DJ Turner being forced into a corner role. We watched Geno Stone get hurt this past weekend, able to practice in a limited capacity this week. We'll touch on the injuries later in the show, but with the Bengals defensive backfield that's been banged up a ton already this year, I'm worried about the level of production A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith could have this weekend. I think the two receivers could go for big numbers. We've seen receivers go for big numbers earlier this year, deep touchdowns in both the Panthers and Chiefs games. Zay Flowers having over 100 yards against us for the Ravens. And the Eagles have two elite weapons. We haven't faced that yet this year, and we're going to be faced with it on Sunday. And I'm certainly worried about how that might shake out. But if there's a game for this defensive backfield, these corners and safeties, to prove that they've taken a step since the beginning of the season, these last two games have looked good, but there certainly hasn't been elite weapons on the offensive side of the ball for either of these last two teams we've played. So it's a chance for this defense to show that they've really taken a step, especially at the corner position.
Yeah, and this is the first opportunity for them to do that against some real high value weapons like you touched on. I mean, A.J. Brown, so far this year, he's only played in 3 games due to injury, but 324 yards on 16 catches in that. He's averaging 20.3 yards per catch, an explosive, big, go up and get it type of wide receiver who can burn you and beat you physically. He's going to be a really tough matchup for Cam Taylor-Britt, who we've already seen struggle a little bit one-on-one this year. So A.J. Brown, 98.6 PFF grade win in single coverage. So the Bengals are going to have to figure out what they do against A.J. Brown. And the problem is that, like you mentioned, okay, let's say that you decide to shadow A.J. Brown with multiple DBs. Well, then you're leaving Devontae Smith. And Devontae Smith has 25 catches for 301 and 2 touchdowns on the year. He is coming off of a game where he went 1 catch for -2 yards.
Right.
And so my gut is telling me that their offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, is really going to be looking to get him more involved in this game and in this matchup. And so don't be surprised if early on they try to get to Devontae Smith multiple times early on. And then the other piece of it, quite frankly, is that the Bengals haven't done well against tight ends. Dallas Goedert right now, hamstring injury. He's listed as questionable, didn't practice today. But with those 3 receiving weapons, the Eagles have 3 different wide receivers who have over 300 yards on the year, all of them capable of making big plays, all of them a matchup nightmare for this Bengals team. So that's going to be one of the biggest challenges without a doubt, but it's not the only one. And the problem is that we talk about the DBs and the wide receivers and how do we make sure that we're matched up there. But, oh, wait. If you do decide to focus on the receivers, what do you have left, Jacob?
Saquon Barkley.
Saquon Barkley, who, oh, by the way, signed
pretty
a
good.
$38 million deal, is 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards at 662, and 5th in yards after contact at 376. So, I mean, this is going to be a very big test for Lou Anarumo, and seeing what kind of creativity he comes up with. We've seen a little bit more out of him the last couple of weeks in terms of disguising coverages and giving some more unique pre-snap looks against the offense. But now you're going up against Jalen Hurts. You're going up against these 3 wide receivers, and you're going up against Saquon Barkley, who can burn you in multiple ways.
This is the most weapons the Bengals are going to face this year. This might be the most loaded offense in the entire NFL when it comes to name value with the injuries we've seen in San Francisco. They're certainly out of the mix. I mean, all due respect to Jordan Mason, putting up great numbers, but doesn't exactly carry the same weight as a Christian McCaffrey. With Saquon Barkley on this offense with a bona fide 1-2 wide receiver duo, or 1-1, I should say. Devontae Smith has been incredible since he got to the league, and I'm certainly worried about it. But like I said earlier, it's just another chance for Cam Taylor-Britt and the rest of the secondary to show that those first few weeks were the outlier. And now that they're a better group with a better defensive line that's been able to get more pressure. And that's where I wanted to go next for this Bengals defense. They have a huge opportunity this week. This defensive line has been much better the last 2 weeks getting pressure on the quarterback. And that's because of Sam Hubbard and the interior finally bringing up their level of play to what Trey Hendrickson has been doing all year long. Now, this week, I don't expect Sam Hubbard to be a huge factor, and I don't think that's a huge fault of his own. He'll be lined up across from Lane Johnson, who's probably the best right tackle in the league and has been for some time now. But Trey Hendrickson on the other side, the guy we always rely on, has a huge advantage. Jordan Mailata, the all-pro left tackle, for the Philadelphia Eagles, is out. He was placed on the injured reserve a few weeks ago. So Trey Hendrickson is going to be matched up with a backup tackle. And I don't know about you, but as soon as I see that, I get really excited because I've seen what Trey Hendrickson does to the best tackles in the league. So good luck, Fred Johnson, because I think Trey Hendrickson is going to eat this weekend and hopefully take some pressure off that back end. If Jalen Hurts has less time to throw, that's less time that Cam Taylor-Britt and DJ Turner have to stick with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. And that's probably our best chance at covering them for 60 minutes on Sunday. So it's going to come down to Trey Hendrickson and what the rest of that defensive line is going to be able to do. But like normal, I'm putting a lot of pressure on Hendrickson. But this week especially, I'm very confident he's going to come through.
Well, the problem is that last week the Eagles ran the ball on 70% of their plays against the New York Giants. Now, you may look at that final score and you say, well, they won 28-3, so of course they did. Well, guess what? It was 14-3 at halftime.
Yeah.
It's not like they blew them out. It's not like they went out there and just completely ran them out of the building and it was 28-0 right off the bat. Jalen Hurts threw the ball 14 times in that game. That's it. Saquon Barkley and Kenneth Gainwell combined for 30 carries on the day. So, yeah, absolutely, this front four is going to have their work cut out for them and an opportunity to rush the passer and get home. But if you're not respecting the lane integrity and you're not focusing on, what's happening in the backfield before you start your pass rush, this run game can really gash you. And this Eagles team over the last 2 weeks are top 5 in EPA per rush and top 5 in total rushing yards. Yep. And so I'm a little concerned about the lack of ability to recognize plays as they are happening. And so we'll see how they do. Bengals improving that interior D line. I talked about it on Tuesday night. 3 straight weeks with season high PFF grades. Last 2 weeks, both over 70 PFF grade. But here's the thing. The Bengals are ranked 30th in opponent rushing EPA and dead last in opponent rush success rate.
Not great.
The Eagles 4th and 10th on the offensive side in those two statistics. The struggle that I have, Jacob, and I don't know what your thoughts are here. The Eagles can beat us so many different ways. Absolutely. I just don't know what to expect, right? Like we could come out and we could say, okay, we're gonna just focus on shutting down Saquon and see what happens and try to make Jalen Hurts beat us. And they've got the 3 weapons. Or we could say we're going to sit back and we're not going to let these 3 weapons beat us, and they're going to have to kill us by 1,000 cuts. But it's Saquon Barkley. He's averaging over 5 yards per carry on the season. I hate to break it to you, but they can do that too. So it's going to be a big challenge defensively this week. And I don't know. Listen, I told you I'm not all the way back. If the Bengals find a way to hold the Eagles offense in check, I might jump the gun and
there we
go.
All the way back I wanted to jump the gun scenario. How many weeks now have I been asking you for a jump the gun scenario? And there it is. I need it. What's the number?
There it is.
What's the number for the Eagles offense below?
20.
Under 20 or back in? That seems rude, but okay, I'll take it.
What do you want the number?
Seems like at
lower
least
than that or higher than that?
Give me 21 and a half.
We'll see.
All right.
Listen. If it's like 18 and then they get a last minute field goal or something, we'll have that conversation.
All right. Sounds good. You'll have to tune in on Sunday.
At the end of the day, but what I'm not going to be okay with is another shootout like we saw against the Ravens, where the game ends up being 40-40 or whatever it ended up being. Like that, I'm not going to be okay with. That's not going to get me back on board with this team. A 41-38 shootout, even if they win the matchup, is not going to get me all the way back.
And that's the thing that scares me, because those 2 blowouts, those 2 not blowouts, but those 2 big time shootout games were against the only 2 legitimate dual threat quarterbacks we've played this year. And they didn't necessarily gash us for massive yardage on the ground, but both were able to facilitate long enough in the pocket and outside of the pocket, able to run to throw more than run to run, and run up those scores in both games. I mean, 38-33 loss to the Commanders. Jaden Daniels running all over the field, barely had any incomplete passes. And then we know what Lamar did to us in the 41-38 loss at home to the Ravens. Jalen Hurts is probably right behind the 2 of them as a runner. He's a phenomenal runner. But the question you asked earlier, am I more comfortable with Jalen Hurts beating us with his arm and those 3 weapons, or Saquon Barkley and the 1,000 cuts? I'll say something that might get me in trouble. If Jalen Hurts beats us with his arm, I'll be shocked. I don't think Jalen Hurts is this like top level quarterback that they paid him to be. I think he's holding the Eagles offense back a little bit with how many weapons they've had. He hasn't turned the ball over in a couple weeks, which is a nice change of pace because he usually does. But I think the Bengals defense is going to be able to turn him over this weekend. I think the more Jalen Hurts is forced to throw, the better this defense is going to be this weekend.
Wow. Let me just put this out there. If the social media intern from Chatterbox is watching, please don't clip that up.
Not yet.
Thing we need is
Not yet.
clip out there of Jacob Tissett. Not yet. You can go ahead and clip
it's going to be
and
good
have it ready
after
for Sunday if Jalen Hurts. That's right.
That red zone interception, that's coming right out.
Oh man, you're killing me, dude. You're killing me.
I don't know. I've
ran
watched
the ball.
Jalen Hurts so much over the last however many years. Alabama, Oklahoma, and then all the time in Philadelphia. He had a great year on their run to the Super Bowl, and I just haven't really seen an elite quarterback for a sustained stretch since.
Okay. Listen, we've had enough bulletin board material already this year from the Bengals, and we're in week like 8. So I don't want to get too far into bashing the opponent when I just got done talking about how
they're good.
18 different ways.
Their offense has a ton of weapons, and I think that's why a lot of people think Jalen Hurts is great, is because a lot of those weapons do a lot of work. And I think if we force him to throw the ball 35, 40 times, take the ball out of Saquon Barkley's hands in the middle of the defense, I think it's beneficial for us in the long run.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Jacob. We haven't
All right.
talked about it, but before we jump to the Bengals offensive matchups, what's your take on the tush push, and what will the Bengals do to try and stop that if they get into a situation where the Eagles go with it?
They're not going to stop it. No one stopped it ever since they started running it. So why would we waste time practicing stopping the tush push? It's not going to happen. Jalen Hurts squats 700 pounds, and Saquon Barkley's behind him pushing him, who also squats 700 pounds. I thought maybe Jason Kelce retiring would do away with the tush push. And in that opening night game against the Packers, they failed once, or maybe even twice. And I thought we had hope, but I don't think they've failed since. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I think that opening night was the only time they failed the tush push this entire year. So I'm not worried about stopping it because we're not going to stop it. Hopefully we don't get to a lot of 3rd and 4th and 1s. Longer 3rd downs. Again, make Jalen Hurts throw for him and get off the field and force them into harder to convert downs. That's the thing about playing the Eagles, though. Every time they get the ball, it's 1st and 9. Which is really a shame. And the red zone's 19 yards, which stinks when you get in close games, which I fully expect this one to be. So it's a shame, but I don't have the magical system to stop the tush push. If I did, I probably wouldn't be sitting here with you, Craig. I'd probably be on the Bengals coaching staff.
That's probably true. All right, we talked about the Bengals defensive line going up against this Eagles offensive line. One matchup of intrigue. Our friend Gridiron Grading called it out on social media today. The Eagles defensive line, 3rd highest team pass rush win rate in the NFL. Moro Ojomo, number 4 out of 116 qualified interior defensive linemen. Milton Williams, 7th out of 116. And Jalen Carter, the stud second-year player, 25th out of 116. Meanwhile, the Bengals guard duo of Kappa and Volson, 29th out of 32 in the NFL and PFF's pass blocking efficiency metric on true pass sets. This Eagles defensive line is going to be yet another big test. And I got to be honest, we said it before. For the most part, I thought that the Bengals offensive line has done enough the last 2 weeks against 2 really good defensive lines.
Yeah.
They haven't been great. Wow. I'm 13 years old again. They haven't been great. But they've been good enough. And so this is yet another matchup. You've got Sweat and Carter in the middle. Each have over 20 pressures on the year already. What are you looking for out of this matchup on the interior when the Bengals are on offense.
Yeah, that's obviously the worry. That's the Bengals' deficiency on offense. And if you have a stud edge rusher, we can hope that the Mims or Orlando Brown duo can eat them up. But in the inside, that's certainly a scare. And we were able to somehow shut down Dexter Lawrence. Watching that game live, it was brutal to watch him, and it certainly felt like he was in the backfield every play. But at the end of the game, it resulted in only one pressure. So meaningless running after the quarterback is fine by me, and hopefully that's what Josh Sweat and Jalen Carter are doing on Sunday. Look, that's the matchup that really does scare me. That's the matchup that scares me the most. If Jalen Carter's able to be in our backfield all day long, and Joe Burrow doesn't have the pressure he's had all day or all year so far this year in 2024, then we're not going to be able to get the ball to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And what did Zach Taylor say earlier this week? That's the whole offense. And if anyone has a problem with that, he thinks it's kind of funny, I guess, was his takeaway from there. So the Bengals are going to continue to get the ball to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and that's going to continue to dominate the offense's play calls. And if Joe Burrow doesn't have time, the Bengals are forced behind the sticks and behind schedule and forced to run the ball when they don't want to and things along those lines. That's going to cost us this game, and hopefully the offense is going to be able to put up some serious points because, like we said earlier, I mean, I can say whatever I want about Jalen Hurts. This offense has plenty of weapons to be really, really good and put up a lot of points. I mean, that 48.5 point total is staring me in the face. I think it's way too low. I think this is going to be a big-time scoring game. I don't think Craig's getting back in with an under 20 by this Bengals defense. With all due respect for last 2 good weeks, I expect this offense to have to play really well, and I think it's going to come down to protecting Joe Burrow in the interior. We saw Alex Kappa put together the best 2 or maybe 3 week stretch of his Bengals career to open the season, at least PFF grading wise, and then these last 2 weeks he's kind of fallen back towards the more norm for him in this uniform, which is still fine. I mean, he's still a fine player, but not nearly what he was doing at the beginning of this year, which was great to watch. And part of the reason why the Bengals are still so highly ranked in all the pass blocking categories is because that interior has stepped up and played at a higher level than we've really ever seen them at together. I mean, Cordell Volson has been the talk of the town for seemingly every offseason since he's been the starting guard about how he needs to be replaced and find someone else. He continues to do enough to keep that spot and do good and have good things happen around him. I mean, the last 2 weeks he's had 2 brutal holding calls, but yet again this week we're going to be looking at him, Karras, and Kappa on the other side to lock up the middle, and that's a big time issue for this Bengals offense going into this week, and something I'm sure they're talking about all week long because Jalen Carter has been putting up big numbers ever since he went in the draft, and I still can't quite figure out how we let him fall all the way to the Eagles coming off of a Super Bowl. Getting Jalen Carter in the draft, just ridiculous.
Yeah, Joe Burrow this year, when kept clean, on 70% of his dropbacks, he's been kept clean. A 91 grade PFF, 88.7 on the pass. When he's under pressure, that drops all the way down to 67.7. It's going to be really important for this offensive line to keep Joe clean and upright. I'm nervous about it. Every time, I mean, I think I share this with a lot of Bengals fans, but every time Joe Burrow drops back and he gets pressured, I get nervous.
Yeah.
And I hate that that's the case, but like, it's just the matter of the fact right now that, you know, he's been injured a lot and knock on wood, but I get nervous every time. This offensive line has got their work cut out for them again. Really good front four against the Eagles here. On the other side, though, this Bengals wide receiver core has interesting opportunities here, I think is probably the way to say it. I'll start by giving respect where it's due with Darius Slay. Darius Slay is and has been one of the top corners in this league for a long time. Currently second in the NFL at only 2.1 yards of separation per route run. But the Eagles are also running out their 2 rookie cornerbacks in Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell.
Well, Darius Slay said it himself. He tweeted on September 29th, 150 PBUs and counting, 28 picks and counting, 6 Pro Bowls, all pro. When you talk bad about me, don't forget to mention my name and the greatness of me too. So obviously when you have your star players and captains having bad games, the best thing you want them to do is run to social media and post their accolades. Right, Craig?
That's what I do when someone tries to knock me down.
Right. No, who can blame him? If I had 150
X.com
PBUs, it'd probably be in my bio. So that's fair. That's fair on him.
Yeah. So the interesting part there is obviously the Bengals will take advantage of this.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow has seemingly focused a lot on getting the ball out quicker this year. They haven't taken necessarily as many deep shots as I know many fans would like. And so this week, again, another instance where he's going to have to get the ball out quickly and, potentially with matchups that are favorable, at least for T. Higgins. Whether or not Darius Slay blankets Jamar Chase, I guess I don't know. But nonetheless, Darius Slay, all the credit in the world, deserves it. Other matchups around the field, though, I feel like this Bengals offense can take advantage of from a wide receiver and cornerback scenario.
Absolutely. And with two rookies out there, that's something. And they've had respectable years. Both of them drafted this year, first-year players being thrust into big-time roles on a team trying to win right now. And they've done well enough, but they haven't played T. Higgins and Jamar Chase yet. And I would certainly expect these two veterans to dominate these rookies on Sunday. I certainly hope they would. I mean, it would certainly be a coming out party for either rookie to shut down one of the receivers of this caliber. And you never want to be on the wrong side of one of those. So hopefully a big day for both receivers. But I think that, again, it's going to come down to the interior of the offensive line. And I hate to put so much pressure on their shoulders, but these receivers aren't going to be able to have big days if Joe Burrow's running for his life all day and checking it down. Chase Brown, 8 catches for 15 yards or whatever. If he's backpedaling all day long because of pressure on the interior, he's going to need time to develop plays downfield and deep shots, which the Bengals haven't taken a ton of this year, and hopefully they can this weekend. But they're going to need time in order to have these receivers have big games, which I think they can. I think if these guys are on islands against rookies, I'm going to take Jamar Chase and T. Higgins every time. So hopefully the Bengals get those opportunities this weekend. But on the offensive side of the ball, a big thing for this team as we continue to progress throughout the season is to become a more balanced attack. I think it's something that's continually preached all around social media. Fans alike and media personalities always talk about how important it is to run and pass the ball, and sometimes it gets thrown out the window as just, complete nonsense. Oh, everyone says it. We don't have to worry about it, but it's still important. And I'm not acting like the Bengals are ever going to be a 50-50 run-pass team, and that's not what I want. But when you run the ball, you have to be able to run it effectively. Otherwise, no one's going to respect you. And that's what the Bengals ran into last weekend. Last weekend's game against the Browns was much closer than it needed to be. And it's because at the end of the game, when the Browns defense knew the Bengals were going to run the ball, the Bengals were unable to do so. And that's a problem. You have to be able to run the football at times when you need to run the football. And it doesn't seem like the Bengals can do that. And quite honestly, I don't think it's the fault of the running backs, Zach Moss and Chase Brown. I think it's a scheme issue, a play call issue, how they're setting it up, and honestly just not giving these guys the best opportunities to succeed. I mean, Chase Brown had 15 carries for 44 yards. That's about 3 yards per carry. Obviously, a 30-yard run called back by that Volson hold I mentioned earlier, but not a hugely productive day from him. And then Zach Moss, do we even want to talk about it? I mean, 6 carries for 7 yards. That's nothing on the stat sheet. That's worse than nothing. I mean, 1 yard a carry, I can probably run into my offensive lineman's back and then fall down. They don't even need to be paying him however million they're paying him. So that's super frustrating to see, especially from a guy that we always talk about as the fight through contact, extra yardage guy. Getting 1 yard per carry is not something that you love. But hopefully this weekend against the Eagles, they can run the ball more effectively, because I don't know how many more chances they're going to get, Craig. There were 25 rushing attempts in this game on Sunday against the Browns. I don't know that the Bengals are going to run the ball much more than that. Obviously, 6 of those to Zach Moss, 15 to Chase Brown. That's 1 to Jamar Chase, and then 3 rushes for Burrow for -3 yards. So maybe, you take away the Jamar Chase jet sweep and you give 1 more carry to someone, but I think 25 carries is right around where the Bengals want to sit on the offensive side of the ball. Would you just straight up say we need to run the ball more often, or do you just think these guys need to be more effective with the ball in their hand?
Well, no, I think you have to establish the run, and I talked about that multiple times this year. I think that the Bengals oftentimes just rely on the pass so much and they forget about the run, and they never really get the defense thinking about anything else. I also think that at the end of the game, Zach Taylor has become so predictable that there is no real second guessing on the defensive side. I think ultimately when you look at Chase Brown's effectiveness and you look at what he's been able to do, it's been really impressive, because when you look at the holes that he's getting and the blocking he's getting, it's next to none. Like he's getting basically nothing out of this offensive line in terms of helping them. And there's a couple of things that go into that. I think one is watching on tape, this Bengals offensive line is not overly explosive off the ball when they're run blocking, and they're kind of slow and they probably don't get in good positions and they lose that block. when you look at the stats, Chase Brown, bottom 6 in the league in perfect block run rate. So when he's getting the ball, he's 6th lowest in the league in terms of getting good blocking ahead of him. Less than 40% of his carries, closer to 35% of his carries, he's not getting good blocking up front. I mean, that's matching the likes of Miles Sanders, Antonio Gibson, Cam Akers, Deontay Foreman, versus guys like Jonathan Taylor, who's getting a perfect block on nearly 65% of his carries. And I think that offensive line, part of it is that we hear it from other offensive linemen. We heard it from Andrew Whitworth. We've heard it from others along
Just
the way.
for the people, I think I got this right. There you go.
There it is.
That's what we're talking about there. Chase Brown's so explosive. Look how high he is on that left side, basically in a category of his own with those 2 running backs in Miami that are always talked about as the 2 fastest guys in the league. Chase Brown's right there with them, but he's just not getting help by the offensive line. And then this is just perfect block run rate, which I'm not asking for perfection, but I certainly would like a little bit more than under 40% of what you're getting, just because look at how many teams are giving their running backs better opportunities. And Chase Brown's just not getting it while still being so explosive. This just makes me think, wow, what could this run game be? And it makes me really more comfortable with what it is right now, because it seems a little easier to fix than scheme and running back position. Just have the O-line block the run a little bit better. And we have guys on the offensive line that I trust and I believe in. If you move Chase Brown on this graph to the right, he's the best running back in the league. And I truly do believe he has that in him somewhere.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to what we've heard from other offensive linemen along the way is that there's just something about kind of just being super physical and just going out and run blocking. It's a lot different from an offensive lineman's perspective, run blocking versus pass blocking. And I think when you don't run the ball a whole lot throughout the course of the game, you never really get in that physical mental mode of run blocking and just dominating your opponent because you're so focused on dropping back in your pass block, taking what comes towards you, having to respond to the defender versus just going out and playing smash mouth football. And so I think ultimately if the Bengals expect to get better there, they're just going to have to do it more often. And I think that this team is good enough to improve in that facet. But the other piece of it that's been frustrating for me is Zach Taylor loves to do these little toss plays to the outside and some of these other things that just like never go anywhere. And so, you know, there's a lot of conversation that goes into it, but ultimately I think what it comes down to is you got to establish it earlier on. I'm not asking you to run it 5 times on the first drive, but if you don't see it at all over the first 3 quarters and then you get a lead and you have to run the ball at the end, your team's just not ready for that.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of exactly what I was talking about is I don't necessarily know that they're going to run the ball more often, but how many of those rushes for Chase Brown came consecutively right there at the end of the game? Just run him more often at the beginning of the game. I'm not saying he needs more than 15 touches, but give him 4 of those on the first drive. And I'm not talking about dump off screens. Let the offensive line get on the train tracks and go. You got to hit somebody and get those juices flowing. Just like Craig said, that means something. And we can talk about momentum. And I know that's been a big debate on sports Twitter over the last few days, whether or not momentum's real, but I certainly think it is. And in the NFL, it certainly applies, at least in my mind, in the run game. And if you can't run the ball early, you're not going to be able to run the ball late. And the Bengals need to start to establish that earlier in the game. But I don't think it should take away from the passing game. The Bengals passing game is what this offense is built around. It's always what's going to drive this team. It's Joe Burrow, it's Jamar Chase, and for as long as he'll be here, it's going to be T. Higgins. And I think that is better than anywhere in the league. I'll say it. I think it's the best trio in the league. I don't think that's crazy to say. And when you have that kind of weaponry, you throw the ball more often. And if you go out and, like the Eagles did, you add a Saquon Barkley, then you change your mindset and you get the ball to your running back more often. But we have Chase Brown. With all due respect to him, we just pulled up a graphic that he's one of the most explosive runners in the league. He's not yet Jamar Chase or T. Higgins. He's nowhere near that level, and neither is Zach Moss. So we're going to continue to be a pass-first offense. It's going to be how we get this team going. I mean, Jamar Chase had a carry last week for 11 yards on a jet sweep. Why don't we do a little more of that? Let's get Jamar Chase the ball on some jet sweeps, some quick action. Let this offensive line get downfield with the ball in a playmaker's hands. I'm all for being creative. I don't care how you do it, but getting a balanced attack is going to allow you to be able to salt away leads later in the game. And I was going to say lucky for us, but it's certainly not lucky. But for the Bengals this season, there hasn't been a situation where we've had a lead late that we've really had to salt away, other than, I guess, against the Browns, where it was, we were up 14 and Jameis Winston led a fluky touchdown drive and an onside kick they had no chance of recovering. So, I don't know. But the Bengals haven't been put in a situation where they have to drain the clock in order to beat a really good football team yet this year. And hopefully down the line, hopefully we're blowing everyone out by 50 and we still don't have a situation. But we know if we're going to win games, they're going to be close games and you're going to have to win them a standard way. And NFL teams win games by running the football and draining the clock. And I know people want to throw the ball more, and I'm all for it. Be more aggressive down the line. But you're going to have to be able to run the ball at the end of the game consecutively with success. And that's why people hate running the ball at the end of the game. It's because it hasn't worked. If we had been able to run the ball 10 times in a row and drain 4 minutes off the clock and win a football game, no one would care. It would be great. Everyone would be for it. So run the ball more effectively, run it more often, and running it earlier is going to be able to open up it later. And it's just important to not take away from the passing game, though. Keep the first things first, as everyone always says, and that is getting the ball in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase's hands. Winning this week couldn't be more important, and it's going to come down to the offense. I know the defense has taken massive strides over the last few weeks. At least in my eyes, I have a lot more faith in them than I have at any other point this season going into this Eagles game, but we know it's going to come down to the offense putting up points and combating this Eagles defense that does have some holes, but is very, very good and has stars littered all over it. It's gonna be an interesting game. It's certainly a prove-it game for the Bengals after beating two lackluster teams back-to-back, the Giants and the Browns. But fun fact, the Eagles also coming off wins against the Giants and the Browns. So both teams have seen a similar mix over the last 2 weeks and now face each other in Cincinnati for what is going to be the whiteout game. The Bengals have never lost the whiteout, Craig. And I see you're whited out today yourself.
I'm whited out. I'm ready.
Hopping on the vibes.
I'm ready for it. Let's do it. It's exciting. One final note on Chase Brown. If he's gonna break out, this weekend feels like a good one.
Oh yeah.
His twin brother Sidney Brown is a safety on the Eagles. So if he's gonna do it, it feels like this is a great weekend to make that happen.
It certainly would be. And the Bengals have had a very lucky week. And I guess with injury luck, I put it in quotes for a reason because we've had a lot of guys get hurt in order to have as much luck if we had to avoid long stays on the IR. But with those injuries the Bengals have sustained, they have remained incredibly lucky this season. When Myles Murphy got hurt in the preseason, we thought he was going to be out for a long, long time. He only missed 4 weeks. He was back for the Ravens game. Then we turn around and you lose B.J. Hill early in the season. Scary injury. He's back after a couple weeks. Sheldon Rankins out for a while, able to come back and produce right away. A lot of times with injuries to these guys, you see a ramp-up period where they're not able to produce right away, and that kind of gets lumped into that injury and how it impacts the team. But with these guys, they've been able to come back and produce right away. I mean, heck, Chris Jenkins played with a club on and made a difference in a football game. So that's how lucky this team's been injury-wise so far. I mean, McKinley Jackson came back off the IR, making plays. Amarius Mims, early in his young NFL career, carted off the field with a lower body injury. This is a first-round pick that we've been worried about injuries the entire offseason, something that was starred and highlighted on his draft profile was watch out for the injuries. Not many NFL or college starts, and to see him go down that early in his career was certainly scary. He comes back in that very game. This week, Orlando Brown gets hurt. He's out for the game, but limited in practice today, and certainly trending towards playing this week, which is shocking. But even more shocking, Geno Stone, who in my non-doctorial eyes, leg wrapped around the other guy's leg, he's just fine. Limited in practice today, probably going to play this week. The Bengals dodge 2 more bullets. That's a long list of dodged bullets. Oh, and I forgot mixed in there, Joe Burrow looks like he has a surefire concussion, comes back right in the game. Dodged another bullet in that sense. So many injuries that could have really derailed a season that was already semi off the rails. And the Bengals have dodged those bullets. So a really good week when it comes to the injury report when it could have been a really scary one. I was ready to be sitting here on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday looking at this practice injury report and saying, man, I thought this Eagles game was going to be a big-time test, but we're not even going to see a healthy Bengals team. What am I going to get to learn? And then these guys just all of a sudden all get healthy, all participate at least in a limited capacity in practice. Trey Hendrickson took a personal day yesterday but was back as a full participant today. No worries on an injury front as of right now going into this game. Such a great place to be as a Bengals team that still continues to try to claw themselves out of this hole. Injuries would be the worst thing that could happen, and we thought we had two big ones on Sunday, avoided them both.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what more to say about it other than very lucky, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about Cody Ford pretty extensively on Tuesday, so I don't want to get too much into the weeds on that, but
For sure.
if Orlando Brown can come back this weekend, and I think he's questionable officially, but that's a huge get. And Geno Stone, all respect due where it's due, but we've been pining for some of the other safeties to get opportunities
Absolutely.
This year. But there's a reason that Geno Stone is out there every single play.
Right.
And
right.
He got his first interception this past weekend. So it's we're gonna knock on wood again. Thank you.
Of course.
And we're just going to be happy that everything
That's
worked
right.
out, and also be happy that we are not doctors, Jacob.
Of course. And that's the most important thing to say at every injury segment is we are not doctors. I just watch games and tell you what I think. And sometimes I see a Twitter doctor and I say, oh, he's dumb. And then I come on here and I do the same thing. So I got to stop doing that. But Bengals continue to avoid bad injuries, which is really, really good when you start off as poorly as they did. I thought it was interesting to note with Geno Stone's play, certainly in question this week. I'm practiced in a limited capacity today, so probably going to play. But Tyson Anderson listed as the backup for Geno Stone. So maybe he will get some work in at safety this weekend in the rotation. I mean, even if Stone can play, I would have a hard time believing he plays his normal snap count. I mean, that looked like a pretty bad injury. He was in the air cast almost immediately and carted off. So to come back and play the 80+% of the snaps he's been playing all year, it would be insane, and it would be more power to him. But I'd expect to see some more of the safeties this week, and that's certainly something that I'm excited to see. I didn't want it to come this way, but how long have we been asking for a little more Jordan Battle, maybe even some Dejon Anthony? So it would be interesting to see them and see what we really have in some of these young guys. While Tyson Anderson's name's been mentioned here, he's putting together one of the best special team seasons in the NFL. He's top 5 PFF graded as a special teams player. And I just want to get this out there, start talking about it a little bit, because the special team spot for each conference in the Pro Bowl is fan voted. So I'm just getting it out there right now. If Tyson Anderson's able to keep this up as we get down the season, I want to make sure all of us are voting for him, getting him in the Pro Bowl this year as the AFC's representative. This is a guy who's been a great player for Darren Simmons on the special team since he came in, had a gruesome ACL injury a year ago, and he's fought his way back, made the roster, and putting together a really, really good season on that third side of the ball. If he's able to get in and play safety effectively, even better. But as of right now, my eyes are peeled for when it's time to vote for Tyson Anderson to be the AFC special teams nomination. I think that'd be a fun one to get for a guy who's really worked hard in his career.
Yeah, he's done it in multiple facets, obviously.
For sure.
We've seen him multiple times in coverage on punts, downing punts inside the 20. I mean, he seems to be everywhere when we're talking about special teams. So certainly a good young player to keep an eye on. And you hear it all the time. I mean, if you're not going to be in the starting lineup, one way to ensure that you're a valuable member of a team is to be contributing on special teams. And so him embracing that role probably helps him as relates to his position as a safety too, because maybe Jordan Battle struggles on special teams, and that's one of the reasons he hasn't been able to move up on the defensive chart. I don't know.
Yeah.
But certainly good to see Tyson Anderson and the jumps that he's made this year.
As I mentioned earlier, as everyone knows, Bengals whiteout this weekend in the jungle. The Bengals are 4-0 in their white helmets since they debuted. Wins against the Dolphins, Steelers, Rams, and Jaguars. Hopefully adding the Eagles to that ledger. Another fun fact, if you're a fan of wins and loss stats, the Eagles are 0-4-1 all time in Cincinnati. So hopefully keep that streak alive and don't give the Eagles their first win of the season. Now that we're talking about the whiteout, I'm realizing I should have pulled another clip in here. Earlier this week, Joe Burrow was asked about the white helmets and what it meant to him to play in one of the coolest uniforms in the NFL, and he did not care one bit. Didn't care at all. Pointed to his practice uniform, said, I'd play in this. I don't care what we wear. I'm just going to go out there and try to produce. Well, I like the clip. I like the appearance that my guys are dialed in. But let loose a little bit. I'm sure there's some guys on the team that see the white helmets in the lockers and get really juiced. They're cool uniforms, if not the best in the league. Certainly top 5 or so. I absolutely love them. I get excited for the Bengals white uniform games. Always fun, and the jungle's always rocking. What did Zach Taylor say earlier this week? He wants to see that joint jumping. Well, I'll take it.
You're probably too young to remember, but when he said that, the only thing I could get in my head was the former Miami Redhawks men's basketball coach, Charlie Coles. I'm an Ohio University grad, and back in the day, he was in a media conversation, and they asked him about the ozone, which is like the student section. And there's this great clip of him that I love of Charlie saying, oh, you know, that ozone's going to be jumping. And we used it in intro videos, and we used it everywhere. Really got student section pumped up. And
That's
so
awesome.
I'm hoping that the fan base can take that same feed from Zach Taylor this weekend. He asked them to be loud earlier, be loud longer, be loud the entire game. I have no doubt that will happen. Game is at 1 p.m. though, Jacob. I don't know if you knew this or not.
I knew.
For 4.
I knew.
You got a little bit less time to be lubed up before the game, I guess. Unfortunately, one Bengal didn't know that this game.
That's right. Not everyone knew this game got flexed.
Wait, this game got moved to 1 p.m.?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
I'm gonna go rock, bro. I'm not gonna lie. I did not know that. I don't think no one's gonna tell me that either. Until you did. Wait, this game got moved to 1 p.m.?
Didn't know. Jamar didn't know. That's all right. He was focused on playing ball. He was focused on the playbook. He was focused on watching film. He wasn't focused on measly 3-hour flex. I would be interested to know how much that changes their daily routine. Obviously, probably just waking up a little earlier, starting everything a little earlier, but I do wonder how much of a drastic change that is for these players. But Jamar Chase press conferences continue to be the gift they keep on giving. They're the best watching sports, Craig. Whenever I see that notification from the Bengals YouTube page, we're live, Jamar Chase press conference, I'm clicking on it every time. Thank you, NFLPA, for getting them out of the locker rooms and onto the YouTube live streams. It's much more fun to watch, and he keeps delivering. I mean, what other star player doesn't know the schedule? I'll take it, though. Maybe we can use it against him in negotiations for the contract. Save a couple $1 million in the back pocket if he's not following the schedule. But that wasn't all Jamar Chase said in the interview. He was asked about that very contract, what such a historic season so far, or at least on pace for a historic season so far, what it might mean for those negotiations.
It doesn't mean everything right now. You know what I'm saying? We're still in the hole. You know, if we was probably a positive record, I'd probably be more satisfied with it. But, I mean, it's cool to see it. You know what I'm saying? That's my expectations, but, you know, it's cool to see. I got to keep going, though. I'll be more satisfied at the end of the year when I see the full stats.
Is it a reminder of what you're worth? Maybe not for you, but for others?
What's understood ain't got to be explained, bro. Honestly, I feel like everyone knows the worth, you know? It doesn't.
What's understood doesn't have to be explained. And I think it is understood by the vast majority of Bengals fans. And at this point, they're really hoping that the Bengals front office understands it as well. And that is, Jamar Chase is the best receiver in football. And if he's not the best, he's certainly right there in the conversation. This season, he leads the league in receiving with 620 yards. And that's not all. He's tied for the league in touchdowns with 6. He says that's his expectation, but that's not the expectation for anybody when it comes to NFL football. He has been incredible this year. 39 catches, top 10 in the league, a 16-yard average. The man just produces. It's all he does. Every week is a guaranteed a few yards and a score. I mean, the man does not stop. It's such consistency that I feel like at some point the Bengals are going to have to break their model and start negotiating in the middle of the season because he's going to drive his value up too much. He's too good. He's been the best receiver in football all year, and it hasn't really been that close. And at this point, 7 weeks in, we're looking back with the first couple weeks where he was so lackluster to make up that much space and lead the league like he does now. That's incredible. You know how good Jamar Chase has been in the last 5 weeks? The passer rating when targeting him is 141. 141 passer rating when targeting Jamar Chase. No in-man coverage, no against the zone, no on a post route at all. Targeting Jamar Chase, 141 passer rating. He has been incredible, and I'm so glad he's in stripes, and I hope he will be for the rest of his career, and I hope he knows that Bengals fans do understand exactly how great he is.
I just hope the Brown family's ready to put some money into escrow next offseason, because they're going to have to put a lot of money down when they guarantee Chase
A lot.
A big payday. And I know that they just signed another corporate partnership. I'm sure they're going to be working on more. But look, I mean, they're going to have to figure it out, because I think we're both on board. I mean, they got to do everything they can right now to try and retain Jamar Chase and T. Higgins.
Absolutely.
And Jamar Chase, you know, you can only tag one of them. So you got to figure out what you're going to do. Well, I guess technically they could tag T next year and then Jamar the year afterwards.
Right.
But I think we'd both agree that it'd be nice to just lock them both up.
Just get
and
it
put that
done.
money in escrow and not have to worry about it. So
That's right.
yeah. But to the earlier conversation, I mean, about not knowing when the game is, I think so many of these guys are used to just like not even thinking about anything until like the day of.
Right.
But he said there was a follow-up conversation about whether or not he preferred 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock. And he's like, I'm not a morning person. It takes me 2 hours most game days before I even say hello to somebody in the locker room. Like, that's not me. I'd much rather prefer play at 4. We should have kept it at 4. So, listen, 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 12 o'clock rock. Like, Jamar Chase is going to find the end zone. He's
that's
gonna
right.
Get open deep. We're gonna feed him the ball, and that's all that really matters.
And now that game that was flexed in jeopardy of being what it was flexed for. Jaden Daniels hasn't practiced the last 2 days. Obviously, we're talking about Bears Commanders flexed into that Bengals Eagles 425 slot to be a marquee matchup between the number 1 and number 2 pick. Something I was really, really excited for, and a big time win for you Chatterbox Bengals listeners, because spoiler alert, if Jaden's out there, that postgame show might be a little shorter, because that game kicks off right away, and I gotta watch 1 versus 2. This is going to be a hell of a game. So hopefully he plays. And Jim Nantz and Tony Romo were diverted to Bears at Commanders. So another big win for Bengals fans to get those eardrums saved from Tony's babbling. So big wins there. Craig, it's Thursday night, so we got to do it. You got any picks for tonight, or something else you wanted to add before we went out?
Just before we get to Thursday night,
of course.
Bengals 2.5 point favorites, 47.5 over under. What are you going with?
I'm taking the over, and I'm taking the Bengals. Why do we still do this? Why do you still ask me? It's the same answer every week. I'm a man of habit. It's not even thinking anymore. It's just see Bengals, bet Bengals. It's what I do.
The over might be like the easiest money I've seen.
I think so. I really think so.
Over 47.5 feels like such free money. It's unbelievable. I'm going to reserve my comment on the spread for that game. But nonetheless, tonight, Rams versus Vikings.
That's right.
Thursday night picks. Rams go in as 3-point dogs. What are you thinking here?
I think Cooper Kupp's going to get every reception in the entire game. His line set at 6.5. I'm taking the over. I don't know why it's so low. We've heard rumors all week about Cooper Kupp being in some trade conversations, other teams calling about Kupp, the Rams calling teams about Kupp. The Chiefs were linked to Kupp before trading for DeAndre Hopkins. I think the Rams are going to go out there, and Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford are going to say, here, look at this. Look how good Cooper Kupp is. Look how many catches he can get without getting hurt. Watch this. And just keep dumping it to him all game long. I expect it to be a big Cooper Kupp game. I have him over 6.5 receptions. And then I'd feel like an idiot if I didn't take Kyren Williams to score a touchdown, because he scores one every game.
It's worth noting Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua
That's right.
both active tonight. So it'll be very interesting to see how the Rams utilize those 2 stars and what the Vikings do to neutralize them. And because of that, I'm taking Kyren Williams over 73.5 yards rushing tonight.
Love that.
I think that they take advantage of the defense trying to key in on those 2 returning players. Kyren Williams, 73.5 yards rushing. I'm going to take the over. 99% of the money from what I saw is on Vikings money line. You know what that means. I'm taking Rams +3.
I am too.
And then I'm going Aaron Jones under 69.5 yards rushing. I think that the Vikings get back on track offensively. Justin Jefferson finds finds the end zone. Kyron Williams finds the end zone. And this game's going over for the first time this year. I'm picking the primetime over.
Let's go. Let's have some fun.
So
I love that.
We're going to have a good time tonight.
You said it. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp back. So naturally, who did I take as the first touchdown scorer? Tutu Atwell's getting in the end zone for the first time this year. Plus 2,800. Tutu Atwell first touchdown.
Are you just book it with Trent at this point?
Did he take Tutu Atwell?
Book it with
No
Trent.
way.
Tutu Atwell. So
I didn't
you can
see that.
Chalk that one up.
Dang, all right.
Now.
Never mind. I'm cashing it out right now. It has been.
Yep. So
it has been cashed out. Tutu Atwell touchdown off my card. I thought it was a good bet, Craig. Dang it.
Tutu Atwell
That's
first
a shame.
touchdown plus 2,000. Trent Atia took that one. He also took, and this is kind of funny because it goes against what I'm saying. He took Kyron Williams under 73.5 rushing yards. I'm taking the over.
That's good.
He took Cooper Kupp over 7 receptions.
No!
That's going against what you just said.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
And he took Justin Jefferson over 87.5 receiving yards.
I'm gonna have to look in the mirror and think about my own brain.
In the book it with fade, then you may need to rethink your bets.
No.
But if you don't, I think
I'm sticking with Kupp. I'm out on Tutu.
Trent's also got Rams plus 3 tonight. So for what it's worth, I'm at least with him on that one.
Yeah, I'm on that one.
I mean, but I thought I think
that's a shame. That's a shame.
Nonetheless, just book it with Jacob, I guess.
Don't put that curse on me.
Tonight.
Don't put that curse on me. Well, for tonight's big-time game this weekend, we're going to find out what this Bengals team's all about. Able to win 3 of the last 4 and crawl their way back into the playoff picture, but a big-time test this week against the first real competition in a few weeks. The Philadelphia Eagles come to town for the whiteout game. The Bengals and Joe Burrow take on Jalen Hurts. And like we said earlier, the Bengals have never lost a whiteout game. Hopefully that trend continues. The Eagles have never won in Cincinnati. Look at that picture down there on the left, Craig. Man, isn't that beautiful? I love the whiteout games. This fan base does such a great job at executing all the different things that the stadium does. The stripe out, the whiteout, it's all been so good for this team, and that's why Zach Taylor and all the players say they appreciate the home field atmosphere. It's one of the few places in professional football that actually does give you a home field advantage. And that's something that we're hopefully going to see again this Sunday when the Eagles come to town. Bengals -3 favorites at home. The total's 48.5. I'll be with you at kickoff, 1 p.m. Jamar, if you're listening, 1 p.m. Craig will join me right afterwards for a post-game show, immediately breaking down, hopefully, another Bengals win for tonight's Thursday edition of Chatterbox Bengals. That's going to be it for us. Jacob Tissett, Craig Sandlin. We'll catch you guys next